Hello and welcome back to Orkies Workshop. Let's dive straight in. Today we're fitting the interior with stretch carpet, liner fabric and custom window surrounds. So it's about to get cozy. Okay, starting under the bed. It's not just about looks, it adds insulation, it reduces rattling. It's really easy because all the shapes are square. Just cut them to size, apply contact adhesive to both sides and then gently rub it in to stick down. I'm using one of the bed frame slats from the previous video here just to help me move around. Once it's all finished, I'm going to put them down. You can hinge them all, you can put click fixers, whatever you want. Now let's move on to stretch fabric on the roof. Now ignore the bit that you saw me do already. I got carried away and I was listening to Disney songs, but never to mention that to anyone. I'm using a 4-way stretch fabric and best not to stretch it on the table. Just use like a flat edge or a piece of wood or something to just lay it flat. Don't stretch it because it will distort and then you'll be buggered when you get inside. I use scalpel blades to make the cuts really sharp. You can use a stand knife. Be prepared to get through plenty of blades. The sharper the blade, the sharper the cut line, and you won't get any of those fluffy, funny edges. Okay, time for the glue. I'm using a heat-proof contact adhesive and I'll leave a link in the description if anyone wants to buy some. It's really good for camper vans, campers, teardrop trailers, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you're using it in a well-ventilated area and then obviously both sides need to be sprayed and then you can apply it. Now this contact adhesive is fairly forgiving for a few minutes in that if you do get in the wrong place, you could gently peel it off and then rub it back on. And if you do go completely wrong and it is a little bit out of kilter, you can stretch it into position. Okay, so cutting around the windows, as you can see from the videos, I use lots and lots of scalpel blades. I didn't include me swapping the blades every single time, but just guarantee it, I use about 10 each end. So for all the way around the windows and then all the wooden cuts as well. You'd be amazed how quickly your blade goes blunt. Just ask any carpet fitter. One of the really nice bits when you're rubbing down the fabric is that the echo inside the van starts to disappear. That will be even better once the mattresses are in here and once the duvets and all that kind of stuff. But for now, it's adding a little bit of insulation, and it's also adding that acoustic properties so that you don't feel like you're in a shoebox. Remember to take your time, adjust the carpet if you need to, and if it all goes horribly wrong, take it off, cut a new piece and start again. These are the finishing touches, and it'd be really horrible to rush this at the last minute. I'd be interested in the comments if some of you could give me an idea on how much you think this teardrop trailer's cost to build. I will be making a video later that's going to reveal all. Here I'm using some 9mm birch plywood to make a border to go around the windows. Now, as you guessed it, that's the template from way back when. It's a 50mm border that goes all the way around that 3mm birch plywood. It's there to provide a little bit of strength, but also it's going to help me. I'm going to use the screws to fix the thermal blinds onto the windows in the next video. This is part 8 of the build series. If you want to see the whole lot, I'll leave a link in the description. As I've said before, all the internal woodwork will be sanded down to about 120mm grit, and then it will be covered in Osmo worktop oil, and that's just going to seal the wood. It's going to give it a really lovely finish, and you guessed it, I'll leave a link in the description. If you remember earlier on in the series, I cut holes in the van using the templates at the beginning. These holes are for the windows. Now, you can see the 25mm insulation, so that's what we're going to do now. To hide that insulation around the window, I'm going to cut strips of flexible plywood at 25mm, and then I'm going to stretch or lay some charcoal coloured stretch fabric onto them and glue it with contact adhesive in place. I'm going to spray it on both sides, laminate it down, and then you guessed it, I'm going to cut it out with a scalpel blade, a few scalpel blades that is, and it's going to have nice crispy edges, and that's going to lay up really nicely around those windows. Okay, going back to the flexible plywood, I'm going to put this on around the windows with glue. So that's glue onto the polystyrene and glue onto the 3mm birch plywood. And then I'm going to staple it in place. Now the staples are only there to hold it in place whilst the glue goes off. Once the glue's gone off, it's done its thing. Once it's stapled in place, make sure the edges of the stretch fabric are all nice and straight before we then get onto the next bit. Now front and back, not just for aesthetics, but probably mainly for aesthetics, I'm going to tidy up around the window where the blinds are going to be fitted. So the blinds that came with the windows, I'm creating a little border to go over them onto the windows so that from the inside you see this nice wooden surround. It also gives me something really strong and stable to fix those blinds to. And the blinds come with a thermal blind. They also have a little fly screen front and back, so you can have the windows open, the fly screens down, you don't get bugs in during the day or night. Thanks for sticking around this far. Unlike a relationship, you can subscribe to me and get out of it later. No one's going to hold any grudges. If you'd like to hit the subscribe button, the bell icon, and give me a like, a thumbs up. If you've got any questions about tools or anything, just drop a question in the comments section below. I'll do my best to answer them. And that's all for this one. I'll see you on the next video.